And we're live for episode 33 of the Wake Up Podcast. And this is a special ep. It's another what I try and define as my Hall of Fame series, which is when I bring two guests on. And this one in particular is one I've been looking forward to for a while. It's called, we're calling it the Bitcoin Plebs. And I have two fine gentlemen with me. I have Pirate Beachbum, the Godfather of the Plebs, aka he calls himself a scrub, or the way I would say it is the Pleb of all Plebs, who's been sort of riding in the space for the last 4 or 5 years, and he's interviewed many Bitcoiners over that time. And then on the other corner, I have Hodlonaut, so the founder of Citadel21, the cat, as everyone knows him as, and the dude who launched the first lightning torch. So gentlemen, thank you both for coming on. Have I introduced you appropriately?
Yeah, thank you, man. I think it works. I totally think I think it's very cool that I'm allowed to be here with Pirate. I mean, he's the Godfather of the Plebs, and I really like his take on the community and Bitcoin.
Oh well,
absolutely.
I'm nobody special, as I always say. I'm just a scrub, and I'm just glad that we've rallied enough people to be plebes or plebs with us, however you want to say it.
Well, speaking of plebs and plebes, well, I'm actually curious. So the first question I've got for you boys is, what does it mean? And I mean, when I say it, I say pleb, but what does it mean for you guys on an individual, your individual perspectives of like what does it mean to be a pleb? You know, in your eyes, and in particular, a Bitcoin pleb. Like, talk me through that. Talk me through, you know, what inspired that as an idea or as a notion, particularly for Bitcoin.
Yeah, you go, Pirate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it started as a joke, just because, like, we were at a time in Bitcoin where there was a lot of people who were considered like influencers. They were, you know, like exerting their influence on their Twitter following to get them to do certain things. And so, like, anytime that you would disagree with them, they would tend to utilize their following and their influence to sick their people onto you. And so it just started as like, hey, I'm nobody. I'm just a pleb, and you know, what do I know, kind of thing. And so it kind of just evolved from that. Like a pleb is just anyone. It's just an average person who gets into this space and just is here for Bitcoin. And we kind of took it further, and we made a joke out of, you know, we call ourselves taco plebes, because at that time, plebs or plebes, however you want to say it. I know there was some serious discussion. I probably bastardized the name and called it a plebe when I probably should have called it a pleb, because that's what I do. I spell like shit, and sometimes I don't speak, you know, correctly. So whatever you want to call it. So at any rate, there was all these conferences going on, and Hodlonaut and I would just kind of joke about it. And so I just randomly pulled this picture of these tacos around a table, and I called it the taco carnivore Satoshi roundtable. And basically it was, we wanted to be an inclusive group because we felt that the meat eaters or the carnivore Bitcoiners were just getting a little too like niche, and they were like, you know, becoming their own little gang. So as you can see, it was a joke. So at any rate, but it resonated, and really what it was a battle cry for just regular people to speak up and to realize that we all have a voice in this space. And like, even if you just, you know, have, you know, a few tenths of a Bitcoin, like, you are just as much as a Bitcoiner as anyone is. And, you know, if you're around here and you're care and you passionately love Bitcoin as much as we do, then I think you should have a voice, and no one should be able to tread on that. And I may disagree with it, but you should be allowed to have your opinion just as anyone else should have their opinion. And so that's, in a nutshell, how Plebs started.
Yeah, we were seeing a lot of people who, like, there is this tendency to start taking yourself too seriously as you grow a following, and like the signal getting diluted and the realness just leaking away. as the amount of followers and your status grows. You see that a lot, and I think this whole carnivore thing, I think it's cool. I mean, I've tried out the carnivore thing myself. I eat shitloads of meat, but it kind of became a dogma where this was like a cape that you put on. If you were like a really legit Bitcoiner, you were also a carnivore. And it was just, it was Pirate who came up with the taco thing, and I thought it was so hilarious from the first time. So I played back on it, and it became a thing. And it was really cool, as Pirate said, with that a lot of people actually thought that these taco roundtables were a real thing, and that we were feasting on tacos inside some secret cabal of plebs. So
I'm sure that's happening in some fucking parallel universe.
100%.
So where did the carnivore thing emerge from? Was that sort of more was that Bitstein and stuff like that, or did it sort of start before that? Where did that sort of emerge from?
I think Bitcoiners have a tendency to pick up trends pretty fast, and a lot of really good trends. I mean, Bitcoiners have some characteristics as being like catching signal out there, I think, but I don't know exactly. I think Bitstein was early, but
Saferdine too, all those guys, they just, I mean, and I have no beef with the carnivore diet. I've tried it too, and I felt great on it. But it just, but like, you know, Hodlonaut said, it was just getting to be this signal, and it was just like, almost like, it was kind of, they were having these, you know, these carnivore dinners at all the conferences. And so we just felt that tacos are just way more tasty. And like, I mean, I love steaks, but you can have a taco 100 different ways.
There's a lot more flair in a taco for sure.
Okay, interesting. Because I mean, I think one thread I want to pull on there is Hodlonaut said the idea that Bitcoiners have this capacity to sense. It's almost like a sixth sense, like, you know, and I've spoken to people about this earlier. Is me and Giacomo did it, I think, on episode 25, where he kind of talked about this model of how you've got people who understand tech very well, people who understand economics, and then people who understand you know, ethics and morality and philosophy. And sort of if you draw a Venn diagram, somewhere in the intersection of all of those three things is you have people who are fundamentally Bitcoiners, because we sort of we're not, you know, we're not specialists in the sense that, you know, we might have specialties outside of Bitcoin, but we're kind of like generalists across, like, you know, discovering principles that seem to map across multiple disciplines or multiple ideas and everything like that. And we seem to kind of converge on these ideas that make sense. So what's what's your sort of theory around why Bitcoiners seem to converge on, you know, these, call them truths, really quickly?
I think it's very much connected to our ability to perform low time preference, that we have realized the power of low time preference. Like if you find something that is true, like that, and you verify it and you find out it's actually true, and this thing is of such a nature that sticking to it over time rewards you, which is Bitcoin. I think that translates very much into, for example, discovering or looking for actual truths in what is good for our bodies and our mind, and following through on actually implementing that into our lives as life choices, like eating shit that makes us feel good instead of instant gratification through sugar or bullshit. I think that's a lot of it.
Pirate, do you have some comments on that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could go a lot of different directions with this, but I feel like anybody who's been in Bitcoin long enough, they have conviction, and like they've been through some tough times, and they've been made to even question themselves at times. And like, as you've been in this on this journey, you know, and you kind of prove shit wrong over and over, it just gains your confidence. And so I think that's kind of, that emanates a little bit from Bitcoiners, and it makes them also be able to call out bullshit, because it gives you confidence to like not think like everyone else. And in my whole life, I thought it was a curse, and actually, as I'm finding out in my older age, it's a blessing to have the ability to think pragmatically and outside the box.
We don't look at, it's not for Bitcoiners, it's not like we look at the herd and think that what the herd does is what we should do as well. It's like pretty much unimportant to us. I think we just try to find out what works best instead and do it, and we're not we don't have a problem with differentiating ourselves from the rest of the herd. I think most Bitcoiners have experienced some kind of social stigma, both as a Bitcoiner and maybe other choices they have made in their lives, but I also think they don't give much of a fuck what other people think.
Yeah, I think what I find is this, like, how can I say this right? A couple of years ago, like, I got asked, the Peter Thiel question when I was seeing some investors, and and the Peter Thiel question is, what is something that you believe is true that very few people agree with you on? And that I think is the ultimate contrarian question. And for me, the answer that I gave at the time, it was just straight up. I said Bitcoin, and then sort of they looked at me funny. They're like, "What? Huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think Bitcoin is the ultimate contrarian thing. It's because the mainstream doesn't like it, governments don't like it, crypto doesn't like it, blockchainers don't like it, fucking meth heads, Ethereum don't like it. None of these guys like it. It's like this sort of this ultimate, this piece of objective truth that is rooted in first principles that everybody seems to be against, except for a few maniacs, which are these early Bitcoiners. And it requires, like, in order to understand something contrarian as that, I think, like you sort of said, is you need to be someone who is contrarian in nature, and not contrarian like these fucking dumbasses in BSV who are like, oh yeah, now I'm betting against Michael Saylor and Tesla and this and that, but I still believe it's like that kind of contrarianism is the kind that says, oh, it's a good idea to drive on the wrong side of the road, or I don't believe in gravity, so I'm going to jump out the fucking window. So that's not contrarianism, that's stupidity. But I think contrarianism to me is sort of defined by finding something that is objectively fucking true, that is rooted in some sort of natural law or first principles, and then having the balls and the courage to to stand up for that, in spite of some ash experiment, some live action ash experiment, which is telling you that it's not the fucking truth, but you turn around and say, no, fuck you, it is. So I don't know if you guys echo that. I assume you do.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I think, go
ahead. I was just going to say, just growing up the way that I grew up, I think, I don't know, I think it just prepared me for I've talked about this before, but I grew up in surfing and skating, and like, there's no try in those sports. You either do it or you don't. And you can't just talk about it and say that I do these things. You just have to go out there and do them. And in the hierarchy of those sports, your social status is earned by how good you are, or by how hard you charge. And so you don't even have to be the best, but if you just have the balls to just go and just charge and do it, and even if you wipe out, you're completely respected. And so that's just the way I grew up. And so growing up into that, like, if you can see how that translates to Bitcoin, like, I look at it as, we're just charging in Bitcoin. Like, there is no trying in Bitcoin. You either put your nuts on the table and double down and buy Bitcoin and hold it and learn, or you can talk about it like some of these idiots on television and and continue to juggle these intellectual balls. And most people over time figure out that you're full of shit. And so it's like, who do you want to be? And so most real Bitcoiners have put their women and men, sorry, women, you got balls too. You put your balls on the line, and you know, you have your conviction and you have your beliefs, and you've stuck by them. And if you stuck, the people who stuck by them are being rewarded for that. And so, I mean, that's kind of how it works in a nutshell.
Hodl, do you have anything to add to that, man?
No, I think Pirate puts it very well. Like skin in the game and conviction and following through on shit and standing for something because you believe in it, and not because you're scheming some kind of scammy project or narrative that will make you rich from something that's not true.
Agreed. So then the next question then is like, what, and I'll get you guys to give me some examples each, but you know, what were some of the early seeds that you guys think in your lives, and you go back as far as you want to, you know, like you know, your dad smacked you in the ass or some shit, like, you know, whatever it is, but what do you think was some seeds that were planted early on? And Pirate, I think you alluded to it with like, you know, surfing and skating, but like, you know, maybe some specific stories. I think people will relate to that. Is like, you know, I know me personally, I had some, you know, quote unquote at the time I would have called, you know, traumatic events, but that I look back on now in my life that, you know, really helped condition me in some way, shape or form to be, you know, a bit more of a contrarian. You know, I was like that in school and things like that. So do you guys have any stories about some seeds that were planted for you, or some events that happened along the way that, you know, you came out of those, you know, being more contrarian in nature, but like I said, a true contrarian, which is, you know, someone who's actually found something that nobody else is seeing at the moment that is, you know, that is objectively true, as opposed to just doing it just for the sake of being fucking different, you know? So like, what are some seeds for you guys, or what are some early stories? I'm really curious.
I think probably like my experiences with grown-ups as a kid, that I quite early like realized with 100% certainty that a lot of grown-ups were absolutely stupid as fuck and didn't know what they were talking about. So I think I kind of stopped trusting the authority. I stopped trusting blindly the authority of people in positions of authority. So that led me to like the second nature of actually investigating things myself to see if they held true. I think that must be it. Like I had this, like even my relationship with my dad, even like that we were very different, and I was like, from a pretty young age, I started the habit of finding out myself what I was gonna think about stuff instead of being told.
Was that different to your peer group though? Like, were you sort of like the black sheep at school, or did you have a peer group that was also, you know, more renegade in nature?
I think we were pretty renegade, like my peer group as well. But I do think I was kind of going a little deeper with it. I had like, I didn't feel like I could share the most interesting stuff I was thinking about when I was younger.
Interesting, yeah. Because see, I my experience when I was younger was I was always really academically strong. So I was always really smart, but I was always the, you know, the little shit causing trouble and getting in trouble at school and just sort of doing things my way. And I think part of that was, you know, when I started school, like I came from an Eastern European family, and, you know, grew up in Australia, and like English wasn't actually my first language. I spoke Macedonian initially, and I remember going to school only speaking Macedonian and just being this fucking weird kid speaking to the rest of the kids. Like I still remember at lunchtime, I've got this like flashback memory of speaking to this kid who was my friend at the time, and I'm just literally just talking to him in Macedonian, and he's just looking at me like, what the fuck are you saying? And you know, I was sort of like, I got picked on initially, and then, you know, I fought back, and, you know, gained the respect of some friends. It was sort of like these early sort of formative experiences, which, you know, that alongside, you know, my dad was really hard on me as well. Like, my dad used to drill into me and my brother. You know, he sort of, he was the sort of the classic archetype of a parent who, you know, wasn't happy with his life, so he projected his dissatisfaction with his life onto us. And, you know, wanted us, and I guess it came from a place of not only disappointment but of sort of love. But, you know, his way of representing that wasn't very how can I say, you know, politically correct, you know, to say the least. But, you know, he would beat the shit out of us and ensure that, you know, we understood that we could never be, in what his words were, like, another number. You know, like, you know, or what he also used to say, his favorite word is, you know, you can't be a nobody. And, you know, the threat always loomed over us was that when we were turned 15 or 16, he'd throw us out of the house. We'd have to sort of make it ourselves. So it was kind of like these, you know, I can sort of point to, you know, a lot of that stuff, which was, you know, quite tumultuous in my early years, but it, you know, it really, I was always the black sheep in my group. I was the black sheep whether I was at school, or whether I was in, you know, in the group that I was hanging out with, even in my family as well. Like, you know, my brother wasn't really academically strong, but I was. And it was sort of, also being the older brother was kind of interesting. So it was, you know, it's, the older I get, the more I look back on those experiences and sort of think about how, you know, how they shape me. So it's I can relate to what you said.
Growing up is fucking brutal, right? It's
well, it is, but that's the beauty of it, because it makes you who you are, right?
Yeah. So that's interesting in terms of how people, young kids are growing up today. How much more protected and planned everything is for them.
Yes.
Like back when I was young, I was basically like just roaming free all the time. Came home from school, no one was home for a couple hours. Just walked out the door whenever I wanted. Spent the whole day unsurveilled with my friends, like roaming around wherever we could, doing all kinds of stuff. And today, like, parents know where the kids are, what they are doing, tracking everything from second to second, basically. It's kind of almost scary how different these situations are, just from basically a couple of generations back, or one generation even.
Yeah, we're building complete fucking conformists. I actually wanted to
we're building compliance machines, I think.
That's it. Yeah, fucking robots.
Yeah, and you see that. You see, I just have to say this. Sorry, part. Like,
no worries.
I've been at one demonstration here in Oslo, like a COVID demonstration, just completely peaceful thing, obviously, but quite a lot of people. I think there were like 400 or 500 people, and I didn't see one single person that was probably under 22 or something. It was like completely devoid of young people, like zero opposition and zero questioning of the narrative.
Yeah, the real interesting thing now with kids is social media and phones. I notice it just with, you know, kids in my neighborhood. Their phones are their faces are always buried into their phones. And when I grew up, you know, my mom and dad taught me to greet people. You know, if it's an older person, you know, how you doing? And you get to know these people because they're your community. And kids aren't like that these days. They're so wrapped up into their phones. And then you think of that on a social, you know, a sociological level. And, you know, most people know that I've worked in social gaming for years. And so watching the evolution of social media and social gaming, and just seeing how certain just experiences that shape you as a human, like just when you're young and when I was young, we didn't have phones. So, if I needed a date with a girl, or if I liked the girl, I had to write her a note, or I had to go and talk to her face to face. Imagine that. And I look at, kids these days, and I mean, they're texting each other. I mean, think about how anonymous that you can have like the biggest balls behind a phone. But like when I was young, you had to go up and ask that girl. So I mean, if you've got a silver tongue as a young kid, and you can text some awesome stuff, I mean, you could probably date the hottest chick in the school, and you could probably be the biggest runt. Whereas back in the day, that hierarchy was a lot different.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah.
Pirate, do you have any stories of like sort of your formative phases, like when you were a bit younger?
Yeah, when I was young, my dad is an athlete, and he was a coach, and then he became a PE teacher, and as he continued his coaching career through college. So my whole life I was always pushed into sports, and like I just hated traditional sports. I like to play soccer, but like, I hated baseball. I hated freaking football. But I loved surfing, and because I grew up across the street from the beach. And so like I was always ditching school to go surfing, and my dad was pissed off because I didn't go to practice. And so that's the black sheep in me. And I didn't care. And like, I can remember vividly being in the principal's office, and, she's trying to scare me and be like, oh, you're going to get thrown out of school. And she's like, I'm going to call your dad. And she calls up my dad, and she rings him up, and she's like, yeah, I've got Ryan here, and he's in the office. He was caught ditching school and blah, 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 blah. And my dad's like, well, what do you have to say? And I said, Dad, the waves were good. And he just goes, well, the consequences. And I said, yeah, it's okay. I'm cool with it. And I remember the VP just looked at me like, what? This little asshole? And that was me in a nutshell. I just didn't care. I didn't give a fuck. And it actually hurt me a lot. And in many ways, I look back and I wish that I gave more of a fuck, because I think I lost out on some things because I was so into what I was into. But as I grew older and I started a company, with a couple friends, that mentality helped me, because again, my family thought I was crazy. All my friends thought I was crazy. They all had safe jobs. They were telling me how I needed insurance and all these different things. And that same, I don't know what it is, if it's the asshole in me, the black sheep in me, the contrarian in me. It just said, you guys don't understand. And I ended up selling that company, or we ended up selling that company, and it changed my life. So from that, I don't know, I sometimes think it's a blessing and a curse, but I just think it comes from just the way that I grew up. It was just, I've always been a black sheep, and I just kind of never gave a fuck. And as I've gotten older, I've had to change some of that, because that just doesn't work in your adult life. Like I've learned about burning bridges and that kind of stuff. But like the one thing that's still the same with me is like, and I think it's why me and Hodlonaut are such good friends, is I just like, you can tell when you listen to him, he's a no bullshit guy. Like what you see is what you get with him. And I noticed that all of my friends that I'm really close with, they're the same. There's no fake in them. They're real people. We're all different. I may not agree with everything, but I know that when I'm with them or when I'm speaking with them, that it's pure and it's real. And so, at the end of the day, I sometimes question some of my decisions when I was younger, but as I've aged to where I am today, I feel like I'm a lot wiser, because I didn't just follow the herd, and I didn't just, because I look at some of my friends and they're fucking miserable, in the way that they decided to evolve. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this.
Yeah. So I've heard from both of you guys, and even I said this is sort of like the idea that life experiences along the way help sort of act as formative formative pressures on the way we have become contrarian. So there's always this argument about how much of it is nature, how much of it is nurture. Curious to hear what you guys think about that, because I actually, before I say what I believe, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about like where that mix is. Is it nature and nurture? Is it one or the other? What's your thoughts there?
I think it's definitely not one or the other, at least. I was actually thinking about it when you were talking, Alex, about your childhood, that you, like, what happened, like the rough things that happened to you, you kind of powered through it, and it has actually helped you or formed you in a positive way. But that happens with some people. Other people, like if you had the nature was of another type, you would fold from that, and it would make you into a defeated person, like basically a typical, a victim, a typical herd member, just seeking safety in the herd, and being a victim of life, basically. So I think it's a mix, and I think actually a lot of it is nature, to be honest. That if you have the fire in you, or if you have not the fire necessarily, but whatever you bring into this world when you are shot out of the vagina into mid-space, that will, to a large degree, dictate the course of your life, I think, and at least it will dictate how you respond to challenges, like with what type of energy you respond to it. So it's a mix for sure, but I would say that nature is the most important in terms of who we turn out to be.
I agree. I think I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that, there's people in this world, like Hodlonaut was saying, that will respond differently, like the way that you grew up, Alex. Like it might wreck them for their whole life. You know what I mean? Because I don't know why you might be like yourself, who just didn't let them hold them back. If anything, it empowered you. And so that's the part that I think is genetic. But the actual act of, being like my dad was a hardcore dude. I see it now that I'm a dad, and, I see it with my daughter, and like, I have to stop myself and be like, nah, dude, you're not gonna make her walk down the path that you had to walk down. Like, I'll just give one little story. Like, when I was a kid, we used to go to the lake, and we used to go water skiing. And I remember my dad threw me in the lake, and he said, "You're not getting in the boat till you can ski around the lake." And I mean, that's crazy shit. That's all, I remember crying my eyeballs out, and I can't believe my mom allowed it. But by the end of the day, I skied around the lake, and then he gave me a pocket knife. And, like, he taught me through that, which I would never put my daughter through that, but I see what he was doing. He taught me to push through, adversity. And so I think I can teach my daughter to do that differently, but I do see how, to this day, sometimes when she's being overly sensitive, maybe I'm not as sensitive as I should be, but then I catch myself in that second that I'm not being sensitive, and I become overly more sensitive. So my nurture, I'm a lot more nurturing than my parents were. And I do see how the nurturing of the way my dad nurtured me also made me into who I am. So I think, like I said, it's a little bit of both. And you don't want to what's the word, dull somebody's light when they're young, is the way that I look at it. Because if you dull it too much, they're gonna forever wear that, and carry that along with them. So interesting topic.
Well, it's crazy, right? When you're a parent, I don't know if you have kids, Alex, but I have a daughter too, and like quite often I catch myself thinking, like, where the fuck did that come from? Like some reflection or some sentence or some character trait that kind of haven't seen before. That just, I know for sure that that this is something she just brought into the world, you know, like she wasn't taught this. This was just like some kind of energy that's purely her, and yeah, it's really interesting topic.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of think of it, so I definitely agree with both of you. It's a nature and nurture thing. So I kind of view it as, you know, like you're born as something, and so I would say people like us, for example, we're born as like an iron rod, and along the way, that iron rod can either stay blunt or it can get sharpened. And I think, you know, those experiences are the sharpening of, you know, the object that we kind of are. So it's kind of like a mental model through which to view it, you know. So I think, yeah, for me, nature is fundamentally important, because I've always battled with that. You know, I've always thought about, you know, an example I use that I learnt when I was doing sort of in my younger years. I was, you know, sort of studying, you know, the mind and NLP and all this sort of shit. And you know, an example that I used to use was the story of two Vietnam vets. And this is sort of where the idea of meaning comes in, which I think is extraordinarily powerful. Is, you know, you got these two guys, and they both have a traumatic experience in Vietnam. So they're completely unrelated stories, but the outcome of the stories is completely different. So one guy, he's there with his best friend, and they're sort of getting shot at, and they're in a trench, and his best friend's next to him, and the fucking stray bullet flies, shoots, you know, his fucking friend in the head, and brains and fucking blood and guts and shit spits out all over him, and he watches his best friend die. And it's the most traumatic experience for him of his entire life. And, you know, it's sort of, he carries it around with him for the rest of his life. Now, the meaning he takes from that is that I will never get close to anybody ever again, because the pain of losing someone I care about so much is too hard. So, you know, his life takes on a certain trajectory based on the meaning he associates with that event. Now, the other guy, he's also in Vietnam with his best friend, and they're sort of running through the jungle, and his friend's running ahead, and he steps on a fucking mine, and it blows him up, fucking arms and legs and shit flying everywhere. And, you know, it's the most traumatic experience of his life. You know, he carries it with him forever. And the meaning he places on that event is that, you know, you never know when the people you care about are going to die, or you might lose the people you care about. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life telling everyone that I know that I love them, that I care about them, that I'm going to be with them, because, you know, and that meaning that he associates with the event puts his life on a completely different trajectory. So it's, and for me, that was one of the most profound learnings I got when I was really young, and that, I think, has been one of the most profound pieces of, I guess, call it learnings or a mental model or whatever way, you know, one would frame it, but that I've carried through with my life is that, you know, shit always happens, and it's the meaning you associate with it. And I would sort of credit that notion of meaning, you know, with, I would think the first person who probably really taught me that was sort of Tony Robbins. But, you know, he sort of, I think, took that, or enhanced that from Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning. So I think for me, that you know, that nature, that meaning, that sharpening of the object that you are, is, you know, it's all extraordinarily powerful and fuck, meaningful.
Yeah, I think you talk. I think this archetypal philosophy you talk about here it stems basically from Stoicism. I think, like, I mean, Stoicism is all about following your nature, and not assenting to impressions, like in the sense that, okay, you see a friend step on a mine, and you, like, your immediate interpretation of this is that this is absolutely horrible, and you may label some kind of very negative label on it that will basically lay foundation for yeah, what you take away from it. But I mean, what happened in itself should not be labeled as good or bad, because we don't even know, you know. It should be as much as possible like accepted. I mean, obviously you will be sad because your friend got hurt or died, but we are usually way too quick to just instinctively ascribe some kind of interpretation to something, which often can be very like non-productive or non-positive for our lives. So I always try to like stay stoic about things and just not put too much meaning into them. Just, okay, this happened, and accept it, and then I don't even know if it may turn into a positive around the corner, you know. It's
yeah, well, that even goes a bit deeper. Is like, it's sort of you know, at what point do you actively turn it into a positive? You know, because in many ways, like an old example I used to use is sort of you know, Hiroshima, and I used to say that, you know, one could potentially make the argument. I'm not advocating here the fucking, you know, the atomic bombing of anyone, but you know, one could make the argument that the fact that bombs were dropped in World War II is the very reason why we have never dropped another bomb of that sort ever again, because we now know the, you know, the catastrophe that would potentially emerge. So we've sort of created a you know, a level of deterrence, and that's an extreme example, but I think it you can sort of draw that conclusion.
We used that horrible event to learn something from it, and basically it became a deterrent instead of, I mean, in some crazy parallel universe, maybe we used it as proof that the world is evil and horrible and just started bombing more, you know. I mean, you can always choose to learn from something, choose to just do one productive or good piece of act from it.
Yeah, that's the, because I guess you guys are probably like me in the sense that, you know, not deterministic. You know, I think, you know, determinism has its place, which is, you know, if you like, for example, for me, like, I look at Bitcoin as almost something that's inevitable and deterministic, but not because it just randomly is by some sort of divine right, but more so because of the analogy I use is, if the train tracks are leading somewhere, it doesn't matter who the operator of the train is. You know, the train tracks still lead somewhere. So direction helps dictate destination, but you know, we can actively change the direction. So you know, determinism is real insofar as you know, we can ascribe a direction to it, or we can understand the direction we're pointing with respect to where we're going to get. So, Pirate, do you have any comments on that, man?
Yeah, you know, I just have always kind of, I'll use a term that my dad always used. He said, you can be the hammer or the nail, and who do you want to be? And you know, I mean, it's funny because me telling these stories, it kind of gives you a little insight into who I am. But yeah, I mean, we make our own destinies, and you know, the way we can't react to no one can predict how you react to trauma. But when you were talking about the Vietnam story, it made me think about this guy that I met when I was going through a tough time, and he said, you're usually a positive person, but you know, I don't know what's happened to you. And I said, I don't know either. And he's like, well, you just need to try to be more positive. And I remember I hated that. I hated hearing that at that time. But as I thought about it, you know, over time, and as I still think about that, like, I really try to do that. I try to look at things and bring the positive into it, because like, what is the alternative? And I don't know, that's my way, I guess, that I cope with things or whatever, but that makes me who I am. But we do have our internal will, and some of that we can control and we can't. But when you're in a dark place and you tell someone to be positive, it's really hard to be positive. But if you do it incrementally every day, if something shitty happens to you, whatever, and you look at it and you go, you know what, I don't know what this is, but something's going to happen. Something's going to come of it because this is the way it needs to be. I don't know. For me, whatever that blind hope is, and that little, like, thinking of it in that light, that's what keeps me on the track that I need to be on. And I notice that people that I know who are super negative, they're the opposite of that. And I look at where they are in their lives, and it's like, well, maybe if I was negative all the time, maybe that's the way that I would be. Maybe that's why, that's, I don't know. For me, I think you set your destiny and internally, and you have to decide what you want to do. Like I said, be the hammer or the nail. I can't handle being the nail. Some people don't even know they're the nail, and that's the real sad part.
Dude, the fucking hammer and nail analogy, I think, is the best. Like, in psychological terms, it's are you at cause or are you at effect? Or sort of what Huddle was saying earlier is, are you the victim, or are you the victor? And I think that is such a powerful heuristic. Like, it's a powerful principle. Is if you're the nail, then you're always at the effect of something else. You're always the victim. You're always, something is always happening to you. Whereas if you're the hammer, you are at cause. And that takes, I think this ties into what me and Francis and Dave were talking about on the Remnant podcast a little while ago. Is sort of this, the world is suffering from, first and foremost, the renunciation of responsibility, or the way Francis described it, which I loved, was the incessant ass covering and plausible deniability, which is sort of like shuffling, putting everything onto someone fucking else. It's like, oh, it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility, it's not me, it's someone else. And that, I think, is the fucking, like, if I had to point at what's the root of all evil, it's literally that. It's like the renunciation of responsibility. It's the being a fucking nail at effect, being the victim, the perpetual victim. And it manifests in really ugly ways, from like the oppression Olympics that we're fucking seeing is like, I'm more oppressed than you. And, and sort of we're all in this together, and you should feel guilty because you're killing grandmas, and whatever other fucking stupidity we're fed these days. I think all is rooted in that renunciation of responsibility.
Victim society. Actually, I love that podcast that you guys did, and I want to get one of those blue wristbands. I told that story to so many people about the blue wristbands because and I mean, it's just a testimony to what kind of sheep people really are. And I don't want to digress, but you made me think about this. Like, I just did a trip, right? I just did a road trip to Florida for almost 3 weeks, and like, it was amazing being on the road and going through different states, and staying in hotels and Airbnbs, and like just eating in various restaurants. I did so much stuff that you're not supposed to do. And I'm not gonna lie, at first when I took off on the trip, I was like a little nervous, like I don't want to get sick, and that kind of thing. And I wasn't like scared or nothing. I was excited, but I was still kind of like cautious. And I noticed towards the end of the trip, I didn't give a shit. And actually, towards the end of the trip, we were in Key West, and like I remember just sitting there. We went into a brewery, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing a really bad version of a song, and I'm like, holy shit, that's live music. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm looking around, and so we're walking around Key West. It's kind of small and quaint, and every bar is open. They're packed. There's live music in all the bars. People are stumbling around drunk, and like, this is like quote unquote risky behavior. And I was also lectured before I went down there by somebody, the unsolicited lecture, that said that if I was going to Key West, I better be careful because people come there from all around the world. And so, the super duper 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 strains of COVID is going to be down there. So I got to be really careful. And so at that point, I just looked at my wife and I said, well, I trust my immune system. We got super immune systems. And, we went down there and we had ice cream. We walked around and did everything probably I shouldn't have done. I didn't drink, but I don't really drink that much anyway. And, we made our way back home, and I'm back home. And, as I reflect back on that trip, so many people warned me not to go, and how, the super duper strain is out there. And I guess what I have to say is, Florida is a really interesting place. There was another night that I was out at dinner, and nobody in the restaurant, including the wait staff, including anyone that worked there, nobody had masks on. And at that point, I had forgotten to wear a mask, because in that area, it was like probably like 80% not wearing, 20% wearing. And I remember sitting there and my wife looking at me, and my baby, my daughter, she's 2, she's playing, and she's like, oh my God, this is the first time I feel normal. We fully forgot our masks, and we were just like laughing about it. So the dichotomy, of then coming back to where I live, the state that I live in, which is a quote unquote free state, and seeing how ridiculous the city is being and the counties are being, like, I don't know, like it really just kind of pissed me off in many ways, but it also showed me that, like, again, that black sheep in me, that contrarian in me, just, it's like me not accepting it, and me listening to all the facts but not accepting it, and then going out and testing the waters on my own. And I've done this multiple times and I have never gotten sick. And so it makes me realize that, like, I don't know if I'm evolved, or maybe I'm stupid, or I don't know if I have an innate ability to channel bullshit, but, like, I can call bullshit on all this crap that we're seeing. And that's why, not to totally to bring this full closure, that's why when I was listening to that podcast while I was on that trip, and I was like, yes, 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 yes. And then we scheduled this podcast, and it's kind of ironic that I just told the story. So
awesome. Hodl, I know you wanted to mention something earlier.
I don't remember. It was before Pirate started talking. I don't remember what it was, but
sorry, dude.
Yeah, no, it wasn't anything important for sure. But it's really cool to hear that you had such a great time in Florida. I think I read something about how this Roy DeSantis is it called governor of Florida?
Ron DeSantis, he's the governor, yeah.
Yeah, like how it's being demonized by corporate media in the US now, because Florida has such an open policy, and it works. Their economy is not wrecked, and so he's like basically fucking up the narrative of how important it is to close everything and mask everyone up.
What was interesting too is that whole grandma thing, that I debunked that whole thing as well while I was down there, because there were so many snowbirds in Florida, like, and every place I went, there was elderly people there. They weren't in fear. They weren't in a fetal position. Some of them wore masks, who cares? But a lot of them didn't. I remember being at a restaurant. This is a weird thing. I was in Jupiter, Florida, a really nice restaurant. We walk in, and you had to have a mask to get in. And so, that's whatever. And so my wife and I just wear it. I wear it around my my neck. So, like, it's like I'm gonna pull it up, but I just leave it there and I don't put it on, and unless they're like, hey, put your mask on. But I just leave it there. So, like, it's not a wristband, but it's a neckband, and it seems to work. And my wife wears a gaiter, and so we're walking in, and it's so stupid, because you're having to walk by the bar. So, but if you're sitting at the bar or standing at the bar facing all the people that are walking by, you don't have to wear a mask. But if you're walking by them, you've got to wear a mask. So at any rate, we luckily got a table. The place was like 100% occupancy. And I remember walking past, and in my mind, I'm like, this is surreal. Like, I haven't seen this in like it's been a year basically since I've seen a crowded restaurant or even had this experience. And I'm all, should I be nervous? I'm like, nah, whatever. And so I walk and I see this old man, and he's in a wheelchair, and like, he's in an electric wheelchair. And I mean, this dude had to be in his 80s. And he's just chilling there with, his wife and his family, and enjoying a night out in a crowded restaurant, not scared. Every day I saw you know, I saw, I mean, we're talking 20, 30, 40, you know, old people, seniors, sorry to any old people listening to this, but, you know, out there exercising, having fun, living their lives. So I don't agree. And I don't buy into the whole, you're going to kill grandma. They, you know, grandmas and grandpas are just like we were, only just, you know, it's 20 years ago. So I don't know, dude. After going through all that, it made me really like and then knowing that my friends in California and hearing these teachers up in Chicago saying, you know, they can't go back and teach kids, and then they're releasing, you know, these videos, these dance videos, interpretive dance videos of their emotions. Like, I viscerally was getting pissed.
Oh, dude, it's I mean, I haven't stopped traveling the entire time, and you know, I've been arrested a couple times now, for, you know, refusing to put on a mask and all that sort of shit, because I'm conscious of my own health. I know, you know, the decision I want to make, but it's the rules, the arbitrariness of the rules, genuinely fucking make me angry. Like, you know, where I'm at the moment, which I won't mention, is you know, you've got to fucking wear a mask while you're inside the gym while you're training. It's like, do you want to like whole point of training at the gym is so you can fucking oxygenate your body, and you know, these idiots like will give someone a fucking heart attack for their safety. You know, they'll make someone hypoxic in the process of protecting their safety. It's like, it just reminds me of like we're living and I wrote about this in Utopia and Dystopias. It's like we're living in some blend of 1984 and Brave New World, where, you know, it's not complete dystopia, it's not complete fucking blind drugged up utopia. It's some weird version of both, and you know, sort of like, I think Orwell's prescience in sort of talking about how, you know, two of the strongest tools that were used by the government at that time were, or in the narrative at least, were the removal of words from the vocabulary. So you constrict the vocabulary, make it smaller, make it tighter, make it, you know, like basically cancel culture is what we're seeing today in that sense. And then the other one is just straight up fucking double speak. Is like, you call shit that's not science, you call it science. You call you know, you behave like complete fucking morons. Like the funniest one is in the airports. It's like, in the lineup getting onto the plane, everyone's got to stand 2 meters apart, but when they get on the plane, they're sitting next to each other. It's like, what
ridiculous.
the fuck is going on here?
Those contradictions you're talking about are so asinine. Like, not only in airports, but like even in like hotels, for example. You know, I would stay in a hotel and they would be like, the Hiltons, they put a seal on the door, like, you know,
Yeah.
like a bottle, like bottled water. You're just like, so I break the seal and I open, it's the last night, and all the hotels are booked. So we got the last room and we got a baby, you know, so we open the door, and I swear it smelled like 5 Rastafarians were in there smoking weed for like days. I mean, it was that bad. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I mean, I smoke weed and I'm okay with that. Like, but I don't do it indoors. I don't do it around my daughter. And I would never do it in a fucking hotel room right before I knew people were going to come into. And like, it was that bad. It was making me sick. And so we ended up, you know, opening up the door, opening up the windows, airing it out. But as I'm going around, I'm finding I found a piece of weed on the ground. And I'm like, oh, but the fucking seal was on the door. It was just a joke. But all those type of oh, and by the way, they had a fucking hand sanitizer dispenser on the wall. So, you know, if you come in and you want to, you know, squirt a load of hand sanitizer in your hands, make sure you lather it up. It's just, like you said, it's all contradictory bullshit.
Yeah. Oh man, that also reminds me of like how they, wrap everything now in plastic. So it's like, you know, like all I see is F+ machines in like plastic wrapping. So I'm like, so okay, what's that supposed to do? It's like, unless you were like physically ripping the plastic off after every single person touched it, it's like completely redundant. Like it is plastic not a surface? Like it's just fucking wild, man. Like honestly, it's like a Twilight Zone. But it's it's interesting how, you know, I think, at least from what I noticed, Bitcoiners were sort of the first people to call bullshit on all of this crap in the first place. And I know you two guys in particular, Seyfedin was fucking solid on it in the beginning. You know, Francis, I know I wrote an article on the fucking second day of the lockdown saying, fuck Corona, lockdowns are bullshit. So it's like, you know, we sort of got bashed about that shit from the beginning. And it's just interesting to see how, you know, what we warned about, which is, you know, the precedent that we're setting now with lockdowns, and with, you know, handing over complete power to a fucking set of retarded bureaucrats is going to turn into, you know,
the main problem right now is that, like, we failed as soon as we accepted the initial base lie. Because as soon as you accept that this is something really dangerous, that that's worth like mobilizing huge measures against, I mean, then you kind of get lost, because now we have this base layer of bullshit lying underneath that this is fucking dangerous, and we end up discussing all kinds of second, third, fourth layer bullshit that's based on a lie, that's based on a lie, that's based on a lie. So like we already like float 7 layers of shit over the base lie, which, so that's what's so dangerous with accepting that first precedent of lockdowns, and the narrative just morphs out of control as soon as we depart from rationality on the base layer.
Yeah, it's gotten really. Sorry, go ahead.
Go on, bro.
I was gonna say it's just gotten. It's gotten so. What's the word? Just mired in bullshit. There's so many layers of bullshit that, like, I feel like these politicians don't know what they're doing, so they're just doing something so that they're doing something to cover their ass, kind of like you were talking about. But they've done it for so long, and the narrative has changed and wandered, and here we are, and it's at a point now where, like, they put, like, you know, when someone lies so much that they can't remember their lies, and then they're at the end of, and you're just looking at it and you're just like, this just doesn't even make sense. And then you add on all the like, I feel like we're also in a information war. Like we're hit with so much different information, competing information. Some is fake, some is real, that it's to the point where, like, I'm just at a point, literally, even if I like what I'm hearing, I don't believe anything that I'm hearing. You know what I mean? I just don't anymore. It's so, and that's where I think most people are, unless you are indoctrinated and you continue to go and, you know, get your news at CNN or one of these major, you know, indoctrination networks. That, you know, that's, those type of people seem the most like susceptible to this. But then there's people like Hodlonaut and me and you, Francis, and a lot of people who will probably listen to this podcast, who we see through it, and I think we're more disgusted than ever because we see how much liberty and freedoms we've lost through all this.
Yeah, I get so mad thinking about all the generations before us who fought for these liberties and how casually we gave them away. It's fucking infuriating. Like at this moment in my country, Norway, it looks like I'm not really up to date on if it has been put into effect, but the government is asking for, it's been going through parliament, asking for the power of curfew, like basically not allowing people out to their homes, because that's not I mean, it's not constitutional, and it's completely foreign thought for this country. The last time we had curfews in this country was in 1942, when it was imposed by the German occupation, because of some resistance fighters had done some shit, and they basically shut everyone into their houses. That was only after a certain time of the day, and now they're asking for that power based on a virus that has killed 500 people in this country, when 2,000 people die from a regular flu season, and the average age of the dead is 82 years old. What the hell is going on? Like, how is that even possible, that you can ask for the most draconian measure of locking people inside their homes, which hasn't been done in the country in peacetime? What the fuck is going on?
Or what about the sorry. I was just going to say, just to add in there, like the WHO just came out and said that the virus probably came from an animal. Like, you know what I mean? That's ridiculous. So they went to Wuhan and they're gonna, they're carrying the CCP's narrative for him, basically, that it was from the wet markets in Wuhan. And it's just like this constant bullshit that they're using on us to sway our opinion and to sway our narratives, or to sway the narrative in their favor to do what they want to do. Lockdowns, curfews. It's just really sad to me. Like, there's not much you can really do other than ignore it, and then you have to pay the consequences, like you did, Alex. Like, you got arrested twice.
Yeah, I think like what you boys just said is, like, I said early on that this period of history is a period where our ancestors are going to be rolling in their graves, wondering what the fuck they fought for. For the freedoms they apparently fought for. They'll be like, look at these fucking clowns. And future generations are going to look back on us and think, whoa, that was embarrassing. Like, that's the most pathetic era of humanity to ever exist. And I actually think this is the most pathetic era of humanity to ever exist. Like, I don't, all these morons like Steve Pinker and these fucking Weinsteins and all these idiots who sit there and talk about, oh yeah, but we're prosperous. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, we are living in the era of patheticism. Like, it is like, we're squarely in the third innings, or the third chapter of, like, the strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. We're right there at the moment. We're right in the fucking guts of that. And then sort of the final emergence and fourth chapter is the hard times creating strong men again. But I don't know, like, me and Giacomo spoke about this, and I don't know how long that cycle lasts, but I think we're squarely in that, and it doesn't even need a conspiracy theory, or the need for, like, unscrupulous people in the background, pulling strings. It doesn't even need that as an explanation. The only explanation we need is that you have a bunch of people who are trying to place the responsibility for this shit onto someone else. And in doing so, everyone's sort of running for cover and trying to say, oh, it's not my responsibility, it's someone else, someone else will fix it, someone else will fix it. And that, what that's done is it's removed the capacity for people to deal with anything in their lives themselves, and they assume that someone else is going to do it. And that creates this sort of vacuum for decision making, in which a couple people who, like, want to play God for everybody and make decisions for everybody, even in the, like, some of them might genuinely you could maybe call them evil, but a lot of them who are in government and writing policy and everything, they're just fucking dumb enough to think that somehow you can make decisions for everybody at the center, and somehow that is going to be the right thing to do, because somehow this is the first and last virus that humanity is ever going to experience. And if we do this time, we'll never have to do it again. It's like, it's such a shallow, incompetent, moronic, limited, incomprehensible point of view that it's, it's genuinely embarrassing. I had Godfrey Bloom, the old UK guy on the show the other day, and he was talking to me about how in the middle of World War II, you would be allowed to go to a cinema, watch a movie, and as the bombs were dropping, the conductor or whatever they're called, who's sort of running the film, he'd tell people, it's like, they're dropping V2 bombs, you can either stay or you can go back home. And people had the choice, like when bombs are dropping. And at the moment, here we are, it's like, basically nothing is happening, and we're all fucking hiding like pansies. It's embarrassing. Like, it's genuinely pathetic.
Like you said, weak people are leading right now. Weak people are leading, and that's what just listening to what you were saying, I get viscerally pissed off, like thinking about all of I get pissed off for people that aren't pissed off. Like, I'm thinking about my nephew, he plays football. His whole season was fucked. And that's it. That's why he went to school. He's on a scholarship playing football. I'm thinking about my other friends who have children in college or children in high school who, like, their graduations, their senior year, like, their senior year and going into college, their first year of college, which should be just super awesome years. They're fucking learning from home. And then I just heard my other friend, his kid goes to a California school. So it's, the dorms are open, but the in-class learning is not open. Is that the dumbest thing you've ever fucking heard? I mean, what do you think a bunch of cooped up college kids are doing in the dorm rooms? If there really is a pandemic, they're having sex, they're hitting the bong, and they're drinking together, and they're all commingling in really tight spaces. So, I mean, like, none of it makes sense. There's no consistency from one end to the other. They use excuses. They use excuses to basically bullshit people. And then you hear stories like that, like, hey, there's bombs dropping. Anyone want to keep watching the movie? And I guarantee you there's probably half that theater was full back then.
Yeah. That was the age of humans. We're the age of sheep at the moment. Fucking couldn't be more embarrassed to be a human at this point in time.
I think we're more non-sheep than we kind of feared, though. I was just thinking, what would happen if you were at the cinema now and they would say, like, bombs are dropping, you wanna stay or go home? I think like some percentage would still stay, like, as we were talking about, that nature is a big part of who we are and not only nurture. And following that logic means that there should be quite a few people out there who aren't really weak. They are more like maybe dormant,
I think people don't like confrontation. Even myself, I don't like confrontation, so I try not to make drama. Now, my wife, she's like the kind of person that, like, she doesn't care. You're not going to tell her what to do. And sometimes she'll tell me, hey, you grow some nuts. Like, why are you being so compliant? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But it's because I don't like drama, because I'm more afraid that of my reaction will be like, I might end up having to choke somebody, I might get physical. And I know, Hodlonaut, we were talking about an experience where you were in I think a store, and you're with your daughter, and it was all about a mask or something, and someone confronted you, and he was being super disrespectful. I mean, you can finish this, but I mean, it made me think of you, of like, I'm a lot, I would respond just like you, or I might have responded like you. I probably would have ended up hitting the guy, but anyway, you can tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, Yeah, it was some. This was like, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, I guess. And we were at the grocery store, and I mean, it's not mandatory to wear masks where I am. It's only if you can't maintain 1 meter distance. And this shop was like not crowded at all. It was easy to keep distance. And one of the employees approached me. I was there with my daughter and my fiance, and this employee said that, excuse me, you need to put on a mask. And I said, no, actually I don't. It's like I'm completely aware of the laws on this. And this employee just kept saying that, yeah, you need to wear a mask. It's like new rules or something. And then I just pulled up on my phone the actual law and showed him. And at that point, some other customer decided to step up and basically started screaming at me, like swearing that I needed to put on a mask straight fucking away, you know. So my daughter got immediately scared, of course, like this grown-ass man started screaming at me. And I just felt, I felt so fucking angry, like both because of, I was just following the rules, basically. I wasn't doing anything wrong by any standard. And in front of my daughter, this guy started screaming at me, basically threatening me. And like kept just circling me for the rest of the trip through the store, like mumbling how I should be beaten up and this and that, and like how I was such a horrible dad and all this. And there was no way I could, like, I mean, the last thing I wanted to do was to escalate it while my daughter was there. So, but I don't know what would have happened if I was alone. I'm not sure if I would be able to control myself. And I'm sure you had a lot of this type of incidents as well, Alex. If you try to avoid wearing a mask.
In Germany, multiple times, almost punched an old lady. I just had to leave the fucking shop before I punched someone.
Yeah, people seem so willing to like step it up into aggression against people who don't. And this wasn't even a question of complying. The only thing I didn't do was over comply. I was completely compliant. And still this guy felt the need to rage and want to start a fight. So it's pretty wild tendencies in humans we're seeing, like the whole snitching thing as well, how snitching is back in fashion. What the fuck? That's and snitching is like almost seen as a virtue at this point, you know. It's because we're all in this together, and you're basically a domestic terrorist if you have one guest too many in your house. So then the neighbor needs to do his duty and snitch on you.
It's again, that's the epitome of. I mean, this is why I think like Ayn Rand's work. I mean, I'm sure have you boys both read Atlas Shrugged or?
I'm actually reading it as we speak. I'm like halfway through.
Okay.
I haven't read it, but I'll check it out.
Bro, you need to, man. Like, it is the playbook. Like, it is the guide for what exactly is happening now. And the way she just sort of paints the picture of how society devolves into exactly what we're seeing at the moment. Like, it's literally like it's written 70 years ago, but it feels like she's describing exactly what's happening today, from the intellectuals to the people sort of eating each other up and turning into snitches, and sort of like, you know, the example that she uses with you know, with one of the factories that turned into a factory, instead of paying people by their merit, you know, paying them by their need, and how that sort of turns into a parasite that eats itself up until it fucking collapses. We're sort of seeing that in real life action now. So like, I encourage anyone who's read this, like, if I had to pick, of the 1,000 books I've probably read in my life, if I had to burn everything and just keep one, I think I would pick Atlas Shrugged, because it's like her capacity to take the soundest of philosophies and weave them into a compelling narrative is something that I've not seen any other author do to that extent. Like, it's just how things can derange is is genuinely frightening. But I guess something has to emerge from the rubble. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that as a final thought, but I want to take the conversation into a slightly different direction after this. Do either of you want to add anything to that?
All I would say is that I'll definitely read Atlas Shrugged, but on this note, the one thing that I feel like we did kind of leave out is the ability for, like, with technology, to manipulate minds and to push narratives. And I think, if anything, we've seen in the last year how powerful, you know, whatever you want to call it, big tech, social media, just the way that people and humans get their news and communicate has been severely compromised through the platforms, like whether it be, you know, on Facebook, all Twitter, all where people are just getting all this information. People gravitate to the information they want, and I believe that is one of the biggest causal effects to why we're in the time that we're in. This has been an evolution of 10, 15 years, but I think until we figure out a way to get people to take time offline, to disconnect more, and to take away from these type of platforms, I feel like we're going to be a weak society.
I actually think let's pull on this thread. So you know, Stephen Cole, who I was he's a Bitcoiner, and he mentioned yesterday, and I actually challenged him on it, was he sort of mentioned you know, one of the things he sees as a positive is these networks where people like us can connect, and we can sort of build communities, and we can, you know, we can think outside of the box even though we're not physically connected together. And I kind of pushed back. I said, well, look, yes and no. You know, I said at the same time, had it not been for these interconnected networks, hysteria could not have swept the planet as much as it did. And you know, I kind of made the point that as much as governments and, you know, central planners and all these idiots and like the media to blame for you know, for lockdowns and for mandates and all this, actually a big part of it is us looking in the mirror and pointing the finger where it belongs, which is at ourselves for enabling the mass hysteria to spread. And I don't necessarily mean, you know, us three in particular, because, you know, we've sort of, not to blow smoke up anyone's ass here, but, you know, potentially been, you know, voices of reason in amongst the hysteria. But I think that a lot of this hysteria is fueled by people, because, you know, these networks are mimetic in nature. They sort of they spread, you know, virality kicks in. I don't think something like this could have been pulled off. Like they actually attempted it with the swine flu in 2012. That fucking moron Niall Ferguson, whatever his name is, he made the same predictions that he did with Corona back then, but this time that there just happened to be enough interconnectedness online for it to spread like fucking wildfire and basically lobotomize everybody and, you know, remove any capacity for critical thinking, and drive everyone into complete fear and hysteria, which is the best time for any mandates to be passed down, because, you know, when people are shitting their pants, it's quite easy to get them to agree to just about anything. So I think these technologies are you know, in some ways they're a positive, in some ways they're a negative, but I think their unnatural ability to almost be the arbiters of information is actually a function of the fact that they are unnaturally large, and they're unnaturally large because they are unnatural beneficiaries of the excessive capital or excessive money that is being created out of fucking thin air. So I think, you know, this is where the Bitcoin fixes this meme really comes in, is that it's not that private corporations are bad, it's that a monopoly on money exists, which enables some private corporations to get an unfair advantage over others, and therefore build a moat, not of adding value, but of a regulatory, a monetary moat through which they become unnatural market monopolies, and as a result, can then dictate discourse, and it's sort of like a flow-on effect, all from the printer. So I know that's a big thought there, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, and let's pull on that thread for a little bit.
You go first, Pirate.
Put me on the spot.
Just throw him in the fucking deep end. All right, you answer it.
Well, I mean, I see where we're at right now, and I see where, like, I don't know, my take on Bitcoin and how it fixes this. And this might get a little too philosophical, but since the day that I found Bitcoin, and really wrapped my head around it, and as I started to see people's lives changing because of it, people being able to work on things that they want to work on versus like having to have a job that they hate, it was really cool. And during the last bull run, we saw a lot of people escape their normal job and change their lives, and they were able to work on things that they really wanted to work on or that they were passionate about. But then 2018 came, and the door shut, and we watched a lot of people have to go back to those jobs. Well, here we are in a different cycle, and we're starting to see that again. And like during that initial cycle, I just had this thought that Bitcoin could be almost like a renaissance, like it would empower people who invested in it to have the financial means to be able to work on things that they love, start businesses that they believe in, eat better, and change their lives. And I feel like we're just on the cusp of that right now. And one thing with innovation is you can never really speculate what's going to be in the future. And you never know how, like, for example, before Lightning Network was even a thing, before it wasn't even really an idea, that was the big debate, is why people just can't spend Bitcoin very easily, and it can't send Bitcoin really easily. The fees. And of course, back then I said, well, someone's going to innovate something, and they'll solve this problem, because that's how technology evolves, is there's always a problem, and technology is used to solve the problem. And I had complete faith in the future devs. And here we are, and we're watching all of these things evolve. Well, I believe Bitcoin is going to continue to evolve, and as it evolves, and as it goes up in value, and as we have more of the Michael Saylors and Elon Musk's, seeing what we've seen for so many years, that's gonna drive the value up. And when the value goes up, it's going to give a lot of people financial freedom, and I believe that could be a catalyst to change the future. And that isn't some pie in the sky type of thing. I mean, I believe Bitcoiners, people who are hardcore Bitcoiners, who really understand the technology and are here for the right reasons, and I think I don't want to explain what those right reasons are, but I think most of the people listening to this will understand that. I believe those people will be rewarded, and I believe those people will be able to do whatever they want in their life, and they'll be able to support causes that they believe in. And I just believe that the Bitcoin ethos that I carry are some of the same Bitcoin ethos that Hodlonaut and you carry. And to be honest, I would rather you guys be helping to invest and evolve, companies to develop things, or whether it be just you Bitcoin friendly, or people like us get involved in the power structure of the world. But I believe that Bitcoin will give people the financial means and the freedom to be able to follow those pursuits, and that renaissance could hopefully sway us back to a better future. Did I do a good job with that?
totally. I mean, like, you just want me to spin up on how I see Bitcoin developing from here, or like, what was the question really? Because,
dude, I think so. I love what Pirate said. You know, it actually, funny enough, ties into the next question I was going to ask. So we've kind of fast forwarded, but you know, I was kind of making the point earlier, and I can barely even remember what the fucking point I was making earlier was. Something along the lines of how technology in some ways is an enabler, but it's also you know, something that has enabled things like it's enabled people like us to connect in sort of like the plebs and all this sort of stuff, but it's also enabled like fucking mass hysteria, right? And one of the points I sort of made was that, you know, whilst technology has traditionally been neutral, when you throw in a monopoly on money, what you end up getting is these sort of unnatural technocratic type you know, oligopolies emerging that make technology, instead of a neutral tool, it sort of turns it into a political tool in a sense, which is I think much of what we've seen with you know, with these fucking so-called platforms these days. So anyway, thoughts on that, and then you take it wherever you want to.
Yeah, I think absolutely that technology can, like, that in itself, it's not good or bad, but it can be used for immense good and immense bad, and it can be used and it can be abused. And there is a lot of, I think addiction is probably the what makes it dangerous is how it can be used to trigger human dopamine production, like basically make humans do stupid, repetitive, mindless actions that just feels good. Almost also like information addiction as well, like this constant reducing us almost to constant just consumers of information without ever really digesting it or reflecting on it. And one of the things I think is most scary, I don't think too many things are scary about technology, but one thing I think is scary is, and this goes for me personally as well, I try to avoid it, but how precious little time we spend just reflecting on shit these days. Because the moment most people have any kind of downtime, they just, you know, muscle memory, pick up the phone and they go to the usual apps of distraction or consumption of information. And before smartphones, and I spent shitloads of time just basically thinking, like whenever I was on the bus, or often when I was just bored sometimes, you know, just sitting around processing shit in my brain, reflecting on stuff. And I do that much less these days. And I have the impression that whole generation, so young people now, never do it because they're always distract themselves. And some type of development of the brain must get lost in that process if you just completely cut out long periods of just processing and coming up with your own shit, you know. So the combination, if you're a weak person or a person that had a shitty childhood and just wants to numb himself or herself with content or information, it's so available all the fucking time, and you can basically just shut out processing the things you should actually process to be a complete human being. So that's scary that we are, and possibly that's why this COVID thing bit so hard now, because people are so unable to personally process information these days. They got used to just consuming pre-digested shit and talking points from talking heads. So yeah, we created quite the situation, and I'm not sure how this will play out, but I'm pretty sure that the first step to get out of it is to have a base layer of truth to build our society on and to build our lives on. And now we have that with Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin both incentivizes and inspires people to do more of like this type of exploration or reflection on who they are and how they want to live their lives and what type of principles they stand for and everything, because truth is inspirational and Bitcoin is truth manifested in our reality. Everyone can verify it, and obviously we never had this type of uncontested truth that everyone can just agree is true. I think it's cliche to say, and it's been said a lot by many, but there is something extremely powerful, I think, about building on something that is absolutely true. And I think it has the potential to just kind of grow up from the Bitcoin base layer, you know, and infiltrate people and society.
Yeah, it's actually, you touched on something important there, is sort of like the reality of Bitcoin. So these days when, you know, people ask me, it's like, oh, when should I sell Bitcoin? I'm like, you know what, why would you trade your real money for fake, you know, funny money from a fucking fake government? Like I always try and frame it like that, and people are like, huh, what do you mean? And that sort of opens up the question, because I think the reality, the real nature of Bitcoin, I think, is so fundamentally important, because it, like, you know, when I get asked, you know, oh, how, like, what will governments and central banks and everything do to sort of, like, you know, kill Bitcoin and all that sort of stuff? And it's like, you can't kill real with fake. You know what I mean? Like you can play the game for as long as you want. You can lie to people, you can twist them, you can lie to yourself, which is in reality what central bankers and everything do. Is like they believe mathematics is 2 + 2 = 438. You know what I mean? That's their form of economics, is they just make shit up. And the fact of the matter, though, is that in reality, they're depleting their capital, they're destroying society. And this actually also really just ties in so nicely with Ayn Rand, where she talks about, like, A is A. And when you try and, you know, convince people that A is actually B, it's not only that you're lying to them, but you're lying to yourself. And what you do is you erode the reality upon which society is built. And that bubble can only go on for so long until like a good analogy to think about it is, you know, Looney Tunes and Wile E. Coyote, when he runs off the side of a cliff. You know, he's running and he's off the side of a cliff, and then at some point he looks down and realizes that there's no ground there, and you know, reality or gravity catches up. And I think Bitcoin's you know, the fact that it's so rooted in reality, the fact that it is, you know, an objective truth, means that at some point, you know, via the force of economic Darwinism, via the force of just personal self-preservation, via the force of, you know, real capital being eroded based on fake fucking economics, fake principles, fake policies, fake governments, you know, the allure, you know, the allure to go towards something like Bitcoin is its gravitational force manifest, and people will just sort of run towards it as just like the only place that they can fucking survive and the only place that they can exist. And like, for me, it's not a matter of, you know, if Bitcoin wins this. Bitcoin's already won. It's like it's when. And my, like, only concern along the way is, like, how many people get hurt along the way by the flailing and drowning clown show that is the existing fake establishment. And that's sort of I just think that the real nature of Bitcoin is just a really important point, because when we have that real foundation, we can actually build shit. You know, when we build on a fake foundation, you know, there's a reason why the house fell down, which is where we are now. The fucking whole thing's crumbling. Pirate, did you Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, there was obviously a lot said, and I don't want to interrupt anybody. Just thinking about back on the technology question, about these platforms, just to follow up on that.
Mm.
I think Hodlonaut, he struck something inside of me that made me really think about like the dopamine aspect of how these social media and news outlets, however, whatever you want to call them, these platforms work, and how that has helped indoctrinate people in a way. I mean, if you think about like your likes and your retweets and your comments and all this shit, and then you also think about just contextual marketing, and you think about like, you could be just sitting there shooting the shit with your girlfriend or your wife and say, hey, I want to buy this XYZ, and then all of a sudden you look at your phone and you got an ad there, and the next thing you're seeing a commercial on YouTube about it, and you're just like, how the hell, what the hell, well, that's all deliberate. That's all very calculated marketing. And so these platforms, they have every bit of personal information on the people that people just willingly give up, and they've learned how to weaponize that and to create they've weaponized these social media platforms to basically not only market to people, but they can also push narratives, and so there's too much power there, and it's kind of like where you evolve the conversation to. There is too much power there, and the one truth that we do have, is, or a shining light that we have, is Bitcoin, because of the trustlessness of it, and like, in other words, we all agree that it is what it is. We all agree that it is what it is, and we all know that no matter what any country or anyone tries to do, they can't kill it. They could try and regulate it, and it would, the price would drop. But with that foundation, and as we notice, more people are running to it, and as more people start to see that that Bitcoin is a place that they can trust, that it's going to make them realize that everything that they were taught and everything that they've been fed, the people that aren't necessarily as aware of the bigger picture as maybe the three of us are, it might sway them to a new way of thinking. And then as Bitcoin gains traction, it gets back to what I said earlier of where I believe this renaissance, and this rebuilding can start. Because like you said, you can't just keep hiding real with fake. They're experts at that, and unfortunately, I think as more people, and the one thing that I think they've miscalculated on is all the central banks printing so much money. They miscalculated on the damage that does, but also too, they miscalculated on a pandemic on top of that. You start messing with people's freedoms, that's one thing. Then you start messing with people's monies and businesses and livelihoods, that's a whole nother thing. Because when it all does blow up, which I don't think it's all going to blow up, but when people finally start to become more aware and understand that we aren't necessarily free, and that their only option at freedom right now really is like Bitcoin and disconnecting from these places, that's where I feel that we can start rebuilding. And we can, and when that does happen, and when and more people get on board with that, that's when I believe we'll start to see change. And I believe Bitcoin is a catalyst to that.
It's a catalyst, but it's also like, I think the thing is, in the absence of Bitcoin, I mean, me and Jeff Booth were trying to talk about, like, what's the scenario, what happens in the absence of Bitcoin, because the slippery slope theory takes hold here. Is shit, as it gets worse, in an attempt to make it better, central planners actually make it worse. And at some point it's almost like a harmonic, right? It's you know, it sort of it shakes, it trembles, it trembles, it trembles until it fucking all crashes and burns and breaks basically. And you know, we're not at the stage of the whole thing breaking down yet, but you know, with Bitcoin, as you know, Bitcoin does two things. One, it accelerates that collapse, but it also provides a an opt out beforehand so that the whole thing doesn't fucking come crashing down on top of everyone. But you know, once you've set the precedent that you know safety is more important than freedom, for example, or that rights are more important than responsibility, or that equality is more important than fairness, or whatever other fucking stupid political notion is you know is peddled these days, what you do is you skew society towards a path of you know cannibalizing itself. You know, it removes responsibility. It you know it pushes consequences down the track. You know, we create a society that's really just built on these thin dependencies where it's completely fragile. Like there's no robustness left in societies. Like, you know, someone farts in Asia and then fucking, you know, all of America breaks down, for example. Like it's just it's so thinly veiled at this point that, you know, these idiots are doing everything they can to try and hold it together. But it's kind of, and I've used this in the past as what I learned in when I did stunt driving actually in America was you know, the first thing they teach you when you get in the car is the instructor yanks on your fucking steering wheel so you start losing control, and you've got to drop the urge to grab hold of the steering wheel and try and gain control of the car again. What you do is you let go of the fucking thing, and you let the car stabilize itself. And this is sort of the thing that will never happen so long as any individual, institution, group, or foundation can have a hold on the lever, on the most important lever of society, which is money. So the thing is, in order for a government or a central bank or a central planner to validate their existence, they have to prove that they're doing something. But the best thing they can do is do nothing. So if they sort of do nothing, then it means that they don't need to fucking be there. So they should just fuck off. But they can't do that. So they have to do something. And everything that they do actually makes things worse. It's like it's the Cobra effect. And what I think, like for me, the most powerful attribute of Bitcoin is that in demonopolizing money, in ripping money out of the hands of any group, any individual, any fucking government's capacity to fucking run, it then the flow on, the second, third, fourth, and subsequent order effects it has on society is that we start to bring real economics back into play. You know, bankrupt institutions, whether it's government or whether it's these stupid fucking tech startups that run non-profitable for 10 years because they operate based off fiat funny money being printed and handed down from banks to VCs to them. None of that shit can exist anymore. Like you actually, like, to run a business, you then have to look after your customers. You have to give a shit about your customers. If you censor your customers, they'll go somewhere else. So all of this stuff that we're seeing today, which are aberrations of whether it's freedom of speech, you know, freedom of opinion, freedom of thinking, critical thinking, all this shit that is happening today is purely, in my mind, a function of the fact that governments and central banks can run fake organizations that are bankrupt because they've got their finger on the fucking money printer. You break that and you start to have an effect on everything else. And I just think that for me is like the most important part of Bitcoin. You know, all the other things that we, you know, will see coming from that, which is people who've sort of managed to develop wealth, who can now think about things that they might want to start, and, you know, sort of being less dependent on, you know, the man and all that sort of stuff. I think they're all subsequent order effects, but like the most important thing, like the eye in the stone that hits the eye of the Goliath is demonopolizing money, you know, separating money and state. And that's like the part that gets me so fucking excited about Bitcoin, because there's nothing else that matters. Like everything else pales in comparison, I think.
For sure.
Fuck, that was a rant.
That was a good one. No, it was a good one.
Thanks, bro.
That's right.
The one thing I thought of that, you know, while you were saying what you were saying, and I 110% agree, is like, think about if we didn't have Bitcoin right now, like think if we didn't have this, like we'd be feeling so much different. Like Bitcoin gives me the confidence to say fuck you, you know what I mean? Like, because we are prepared, we have an exit strategy, we're not, we've opted out of that system that we know is going to implode.
Yeah. Oh man, it's scary to think what I mean, especially people like us who are a little bit more renegade in nature. I don't know what the fuck I'd be doing. Have, with Bitcoin not existing. I mean, I can think of two things. I'd be either, some nut job entrepreneur, running some sort of tech company or whatever, or I'd be fucking some lunatic living in a jungle. Maybe the third option is I'd be some mercenary or some shit. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's fucking scary to think, man.
Well, think about it this way, like right now, I mean, you just watched this last election cycle. I mean, they just deplatformed like the president of the United States. They took away and his, whoever surrounded him. They deplatformed him not only on just like their merchant accounts for them to take money. So you start to think about the implications of this. Like, so if there wasn't Bitcoin, like how would we be having these same conversations? Would we feel free enough to do it? Could the banks decide, could Bank of America decide to, look at our bank account and decide that, we bought a gun and we live near the Capitol, so we must be insurrectionists? I mean, that's what's going on right now. That's fucking creepy. So to me, like, to think of life without Bitcoin, it's, and then, because the reason why I say this, because people that I know who are no coiners, and they look at me and they're like, "Oh man, you're drinking the Kool-Aid," and then I get pissed off and I'm like, "No, you're fucking drinking the Kool-Aid if you think your money's worth anything." Like literally, like I'm right now looking at my money melting in the banks here. It's not a red flag when they're going to print. I think they printed 40% of the supply, 40% more of the supply than when they first started printing. 40%. That's fucking nuts, dude. I don't know how accurate that was. I saw that on Twitter. I think it was Anthony Pompliano.
But,
so
I mean, same shit. Who even knows, to be honest?
I know at 25% it's bad.
Knows.
I mean, exactly, but I don't know. So I always go back to that. Like, what if we didn't have Bitcoin? Like, where would we be? Would there be something else? I don't know, but it scares me, right? Doesn't it? So back to the point, Bitcoin
is that probably be gold bugs, don't you think?
Possibly. That's a good point. People would be working on spacecraft.
Man. Gold bugs are fucking battered women, man. Like I think they've all got battered woman syndrome because they're so disillusioned that they've been banging on about gold. But gold, like, I think, fuck, who said it?
But isn't it the best?
Someone said it, but gold failed, man. Gold failed. Fiat is actually, gold 2.0 in some senses, because gold failed. Like, you can't, like, it's a non-scalable money. It genuinely is. Like, as much as gold is hard money, it's a non-scalable money.
I think I would still stack it if there was no Bitcoin, to be honest.
Yeah. Or it might be worthwhile fucking just stacking cows and lead at that point, because I just don't see.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I guess in the absence of Bitcoin, like, the money would end up converging back onto gold, but it's like it will continue to fail because it's not a scalable. It's incompatible with an advancing technological society. Like, it just doesn't work.
I think we're kind of always just looking for a foothold, right? And we will stand up on the strongest foothold we can find. And at the moment, I mean, Bitcoin is the strongest foothold I can imagine ever being. And it also kind of, I think it's interesting to think about what is most correct, if it's most correct to say that Bitcoin was invented or that Bitcoin was discovered, because
yeah,
it's totally such a fundamental, and like digital scarcity is I don't think I could even, like before it was discovered, I guess it was magic. I would think it was magic. I grew up with pirating all kinds of digital goods, from games to movies to music. It was like, if it's digital, it can be copied, right? It's
how dare you?
but yeah, it's a huge discovery or a huge invention either way, and it totally changed the game and possibly the trajectory of humanity, I think.
Yeah, gents, 2 more questions before we wrap this up. I don't know which one I should start with first. Let's do this one. Outlooks. What's each of your sort of like short, medium to long term? And you can sort of place whatever frames you want on this. Like my short, medium to long term is sort of like 3 years, 10 years, and 25 years. You know, you can place whatever outlook you want on that. But talk to me about what you guys think, you know, the world looks like. You know, what's Bitcoin doing over that period? Like, I'm really curious to hear it from, I guess, the viewpoint of plebs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I really don't think I speak for plebs or most plebs, or I guess that's what
Speak
the pleb is. It's just his own person, right? And to be honest, I really don't think too much about the future. I think more about making all the right steps in the present according to what I feel is right to do, and then I just accept or welcome the future as it manifests. But I mean, if you ask me now, that it will just be like my reflection on it right now, and I on the note that we had earlier about choosing how to interpret things, and I think I'll just choose to be positive. But I mean, I'm sure there will be fucking turmoil and mayhem and all kinds of bad things happening as this empire of lies collapse. But I think it will be a beautiful thing to behold, to see good people unite around truth, unite around Bitcoin, unite around building real things. So I think I'm positive long term. I think we're in for a really rough ride though, 100%.
Yeah. Pirate, talk to me.
Yeah, I for sure don't speak for the plebes. I hope that every plebe thinks for themselves, and if they think I'm full of shit, then good for you. But you know, I kind of feel the way that Hodlonaut. I approach life that way. When it comes to price action stuff, like I don't really get involved in that. To be quite honest, I'm not shocked that where we're at. I'm just shocked we're here this soon. And I'm shocked that we're seeing, you know, companies like Tesla, who I consider like one of the biggest tech companies in the world, with, you know, considering that, and with one of the most progressive, I don't even want to call them progressive, just free thinking CEOs like Elon, love him or hate him. I mean, the guy, the fact that he had the foresight to, not foresight, just the common sense to put that kind of money into Bitcoin is an incredible thing for Bitcoin in itself. Just the messaging that sends to the world. I hope, again, we can never put these people up on pedestals because we never know what their true intentions are. He could do a rug pull and make some money or do whatever he's going to do. But the fact that this is happening and we're watching this happening now just tells me we're headed in the right direction. But I I do feel like there's going to be pain in the, I don't know what kind of pain what pain that brings or what that means for you or I, but I do know that I'm smart enough, and I'm tactile. I'm tactile enough to be able to navigate whatever comes at me, but I do think we're in for some rough times. I'm already seeing it, just in my travels, just looking at real estate, looking at costs of things. I just think that we're in for some pain, but I'm very thankful and I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of summed it up yesterday as like short term, I'm bearish. Mid-term, I'm neutral. Long term, I'm bullish. And again, yeah, echoing what you said, Pirate, is like I couldn't give two fucks about price. Like, the thing is, like, I no longer view, Bitcoin and dollar prices. Like, all I'm thinking about is how much, you know, my whatever, because I mean I've got a future in amber with what I'm doing, and who knows, at some stage I may exit the company, sell it, and then take that money, and what do you think I'm going to do with it? I'm going to fucking pile it all into Bitcoin, because why would I hold fake government money? But I just, like, for me, from a Bitcoin perspective, I don't think we're by any means out of the woods. I think Neil Woodfine did an awesome tweet storm today, where he's like, we, seeing what happened with Wall Street bets, as governments and central bankers start to shit themselves when they see Bitcoin really move, because we've seen it move a little bit this year, but man, we ain't seen nothing yet. And when it really starts to move, when they really start to shit their pants, it's going to be interesting how they try and try and play God with our capacity to buy it, withdraw it, and self custody it, and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're gearing up for what may be the big boss. I would have thought the big boss was going to be another wave or two away, but who knows? Maybe it's going to come sooner. We can never sort of predict these things, but I think from a social standpoint, I think the next year or two is going to be extraordinarily tumultuous as things like start to break. I think these vaccines, I think, are a really unprecedented fucking experiment, and I don't even want to think about what some of the the more weird ramifications are going to be from those. Like, holy shit, like, people just jabbing themselves with stuff they don't understand. Like, I mean, I don't wish them bad, but fucking good luck to whatever you think in your mind is going to happen when you inject yourself with some random fucking substance for something that is just another cold or a flu. So I don't know. I think that with people genuinely going broke, like, I think one of the big ones as well is people like me, and I don't know about you guys, but I've been sort of lucky in that I run a technology company, and I've been lucky enough to be around Bitcoin. So, like, I've done really well, and I continued, like, things that keep getting better for me, financially speaking and career speaking. So, like, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you're just complaining because you're sort of pissed off." And I'm like, no. It's like, I'm actually in a really good position. And when I get up and talk about how dumb lockdowns are and everything, it's not because, oh, poor me, I'm a fucking victim. I'm actually in a better position than I was before. What I'm pissed off about is sort of the atrocities that I see of, like, imagine being like, because I used to be in hospitality, and I always try and, like, throw this example out there. Imagine having been a restaurant owner, or a gym owner or something like that, who's got your fucking life savings. You've worked all your life in, whether it's a kitchen or as a waiter or some shit. You fucking saved up all your money. You set up a hospitality establishment. You work your ass off in it. You've almost gotten to the point where you might be starting to make some money, and then the government shuts your fucking ass down. Like, what the hell? Like, do you think that person is ever going to go and take a risk again to build another business? Fuck no. And what ramifications do you think that has on the real economy of people who would traditionally doing any of these real jobs that are not software or technical based. It's a fucking disaster. So I don't know, man. I think the next year or so, and apologies for being so pessimistic, but I think they're going to be ugly as fuck. And I don't know, like some parts of me wants to sort of do the Francis thing and, you know, start building the compound now. Part of me wants to sort of like be patient, sort of just, you know, keep an eye out on what's going to happen. But it's yeah, I think the definitely pessimistic in the short term, neutral in the medium, and optimistic for the long term is sort of my viewpoint. It's gonna be fucking crazy. So last question, boys, is unless you guys have any thoughts on what I just said then, but last question is gonna be something a little bit more contrarian, which is there something the three of us perhaps don't agree on? And I don't know how we discover this, but maybe, you know, do you guys have something that you hold as a contrarian viewpoint, you know, or an unpopular opinion, that, you know, whether it's other Bitcoiners or something like that, don't agree with you guys on?
Cool question.
You can go first, Hodlonaut.
I'm trying. I'm looking hard inside my brain. I don't know. I think the election was stolen. I think 9/11 official narrative is absolute bullshit. I guess we agree on those, or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just like, well,
I should have.
We don't disagree.
I should have asked you guys this one before we even started the damn call, so we had time to think about it. It's a tough question. I just, what I find though is that in these podcasts, you know, we all seem to fucking agree on everything. So I'm just curious if there's something that we diverge on.
Maybe this one. I think there's a lot of people in Bitcoin who are here for the right reasons, but I also think there's a lot of idiots in this space who have figured out how to get on, you know, get onto a lot of podcasts, or, you know, that, I don't know, they write code or whatever, and they've injected themselves into this. And I don't know, that part of this space just drives me nuts. Like, I could do without it completely. And, you know I talk a lot of shit to these people because they bug the shit out of me, because I watch them over time, and I don't even know why they bug me. I wish I could just be like, nah. But I know I'm not the only one. And, you know, I mean, there's people in this space who I feel are in it for the right reasons, and I just feel there's people that are in this space for the wrong reasons. And I can't stand when I see the sheep flock to these people and put them up on pedestals. Without naming names, that's just my thing on it. And I know some people don't agree with me because they think it's all just a fucking kumbaya. And I don't think that way. I'm more, I don't know, I'm more on the Francis trip, you know, where, like, I don't know, not all Bitcoiners are the same. There's some bad actors. I think actually he tweeted something the other day that resonated with me. He was like, and I've seen this before, and I forget who tweeted it before, but like, the next attack on Bitcoin is going to be from a Bitcoiner. And I was like, and I'm bastardizing what he wrote, but he's right. So like, I love the fact that there is a sense of community in Bitcoin. I love all the plebes or the plebs who are just nobodies, just here, just trying to learn and just trying to help each other. And that's where I find my kumbaya. But when it comes to the circle jerk, I'm sorry, it just fucking, it makes me want to puke. And like I've even said this before, this probably hurts me saying this, but I don't give a fuck. Like, some of these people are idiots, and I see people fawning over them. They fawn over them for their diet tips, for their freaking music tips, whatever. And it's just stupid. That's not why we're here. Like, Bitcoin doesn't give a shit about any of that. Like, I'm here for hard money. I'm here for, you know, sovereign money. I'm here for immutable money. And I'm here for real people who are here for, you know, no agenda. And I don't even care if you're here for an agenda. Just be honest about it. Don't be a fake ass bitch.
Yeah. Easy as that.
Yeah, okay. I think this question is too hard to answer because I agreed with all of that.
But I think that
Sorry.
I think once you agree on something as fundamental as Bitcoin and the follow-on consequences of believing in Bitcoin, I think it's hard to like. Then you're kind of completely free from the left-right bullshit and all the other constructed polarizations of society, and you just. I have zero issues disagreeing with Bitcoiners or people in general. What I have issues with is people who are fake ass pussies, as you say, Pirate, or
fake ass bitches.
Fake ass bitches and liars and scammers, and basically it all boils down to dishonesty. It can be dishonesty in many ways, but it's always dishonesty, and I think being dishonest is just the most fucked up thing you can do to yourself and the world around you, basically. So I hate that.
And this is what I like about plebs. Plebs will not like, they won't cover for each other. Like, in other words, like, that's what drives me fucking nuts with the circle jerk. Like, there'll be like, a group of them that are, I call them all Bitcoin famous, which is also a jab at them, or a joke. The Bitcoin
influencers.
Yeah, the cringe influencers, they'll be, they know that one of their cohorts or one of their friends that they had on their podcast has done some shady shit, but they'll just be complicit with that. But then that same person will be calling out someone else. And so that's the part of this that it's just not authentic. It's anything for clicks, anything for likes, anything for engagement. And like, that mentality is like stupid. Yeah. Like, the reason why I love Hodlonaut, and I even like you, Alex, is because you guys are unfiltered. When I listen to you, you guys speak your mind. It's real. I know it's not some script. I know it's not some bullshit. So that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, same to you too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be a question that goes unanswered, because there's a lot of agreement here. Unfortunately,
this would be an interesting tweet thread, I think, to try to map out if we can find something that makes Bitcoin. I think probably allegiance to hardware wallets or allegiance to coin mixing service. That's where Bitcoiners really start hating on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. There's brawls and fucking shit there. That's true.
Yeah.
You gonna say Pirate?
I was just laughing because, and I don't like to get into this, and I mean, I have friends who like Trezors, and I have friends who like Cold Card, and I have people who, and I always hear people say, "Oh, Cold Card, it's the best, it's the most secure," and then I think I forwarded. Did I forward it to you, Hodlonaut? I thought I did, but I read somebody found some bug in their with the Cold Card, and they fixed it. I mean, it's all good, but it just made me laugh because that's the wallet wars. They all tell each other how insecure each other are, and it's funny when the one who kind of pounds his chest as being the most secure had a bug in his hardware. But I'm from, I come from development, and so to me, like, there's going to be bugs in everything. It's just good when you find them. And no one exploits them, and that's the positive. I mean, there's going to be more bugs down the road, but at any rate, sorry, I just thought it was kind of ironic that when all these different hardware wallets pound their chest as being the most secure, and they each get caught with their pants down. So it's kind of funny to see Cold Card.
Cold Card is basically the carnivore hardware wallet, isn't it? Or
there's a little too much hero worship of NVK. I'm sorry.
Yeah, NVK hates me. He has me blocked everywhere.
I think he blocked me too.
Really? Interesting.
Because I called him because I honestly I think he's.
I have nothing against him. I mean,
I think he's a super incredible.
He makes great product. Sorry, Parrot. I was just gonna say I just got the Block Lock Mini from CoinKite, and I fucking love it. It's really cool, and I like their wallet, like the Cold Card wallet as well. So yeah, it's just I don't think he likes to be criticized or questioned.
No, I mean, like, I have no problem with, I think he's actually a super amazing guy. I think he's like super, like, when it comes to developing and what he's done, he's built an incredible business. Like, I think
Absolutely.
his value is like super high. It's just, I think his social skills suck, and I think he's an asshole to people. And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't like fucking assholes. And if I saw him, I mean, we'd probably be friends because I'm kind of an asshole. But like, don't be an asshole to people and then expect people to like you. And then, and don't act like your shit doesn't stink when like somebody just found a fucking bug in it. And I'm not even harshing the dude because I literally I'm looking at some open dimes on my desk right now. So, and it just shows my integrity. I'm willing to give people money that I think are assholes sometimes if they have good shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amen.
yeah. I think maybe the. I think that's what I think in some ways Bitcoin is like a microcosm of how the world would function without the requirement of a state. It's like people don't all have to get along. We don't have to I don't believe in kumbaya. I don't believe I'm in anything with anyone together. I think we're all individuals, and we're all sort of, we sort of align in groups. We have different alliances. We share values with different people at different times. Everything's sort of dynamic. But I think the beauty of, Bitcoin is a microcosm of the macro reality of, humanity and existence, is that you don't need somebody to mandate that we all should get along and that we all, this is who we should transact from and everything like that. It's like, we can do this shit with whomever we want for whatever reason we want, and we can like someone, we can not like someone. It's just we find our way, and that's an interesting note to wrap this baby up on.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
my opinion doesn't matter. I mean, whatever I think of someone shouldn't affect your opinion of them. And, and I'm also the
absolutely.
first one to, if someone's doing really cool shit, and even if I don't like them, I'll acknowledge it. I'm not just a hater. There's a lot of people that I don't necessarily love that do really incredible things in this business. And I find myself softening up as I get older.
You and me both, bro. I think all of us. All right, gentlemen. Where can people find you? I will put it in the show notes, but if you guys can give yourselves a shout out here, where people can find you and your work in particular, that'd be great.
You can find me on Twitter, I guess, as Hodlonaut, and I make this Bitcoin magazine with Bitcoin Katya, which is called Citadel21. Check it out, citadel21.com. You can also find that project on Twitter as CTDL21.
Nice. Pirate?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Pirate Beachbum, and then I do interviews for Citadel, and that's it. I'm nobody special.